Hey, how's it going? Welcome to an outdoor kitchen. Now, we are part way through this job, as you can see. In this two-part video series, we are going to be creating concrete worktops the cast in place way. And we're going to walk you through the entire process step by step so that you can do exactly the same in your own home or your own outdoor kitchen. So follow along and check out how we do it. And whilst you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe using the buttons below. Hey, I'm Toby and this is Concrete Lab, where we share our knowledge and expertise to help you create your own beautiful polished concrete.
So the first thing we had to do was to build the frame. We chose a combination of mainly 6 and 4x2 for the frame horizontals and 100mm by 100mm fence posts for the legs. There's a barbecue and a pizza oven which will be sitting on the concrete when the tops are finished, so we were careful to make sure that there were cross braces beneath where the feet of these were sitting. Once we did that, we laid 12mm cement board over the top of the frame. We cut the cement board so that it overhang the frame by 25mm so that we could attach the edge forms to the overhang. I cut them by hand with a handsaw. If you plan to cut cement board with a circular saw, then make sure you have a mask and dust extraction and are outdoors because they will make a lot of dust. So you can see that we've now got all the cement boards down in place. Next, we fixed the edge forms. We used a combination of plywood and melamine strips to make the edge forms. First, we screwed the plywood in place at approximately 200mm centres into the cement board. A handy tip is to pilot drill the holes into the cement board, otherwise the screw will push the top skin of the cement board off, which I had to remove with a screwdriver. Next, we roughly fitted the vertical melamine strips to the plywood. Once all the strips were in place, we went round with a scrap piece of melamine, just checking the level against the cement board to make sure that when we pour the concrete it wouldn't be too thick or too thin. On the offcut of melamine, I drew a line to represent the combined thickness of the concrete and the cement board, with 30mm of concrete and 12mm of cement board, a total of 42mm. That way I knew my level was entirely correct all the way around. Whilst I had been busy doing this, Chris had been busy fixing 30mm plastic strips to the back wall of the mould so that when we poured the concrete in, we knew that we could get a level from the back and the front of the mould. With the mould pretty much complete, the only thing left to do was to silicone the joints to stop any concrete mix from seeping through. I used a good quality silicone sealant and then used a pencil just to tool it off so it was nice and neat. It's worth doing this because when it comes to demoulding, you don't want the edge to look a bit ropey.
So it's taken about a day to complete the framework. I'm going to prime it now and then we're pretty much ready to start casting. A couple of things that I should mention are that when you're building your formwork, then a couple of important bits are the lip size. Make sure that that is correct in terms of the height from the cement board, and then level. But I'd do it in that order. I'd get your lip size correct first, and then if you need to make any adjustments, then you can jack the frame up slightly by loosening the legs, taking a few screws out. If you try and level the lips afterwards, then it means your concrete is going to possibly be a bit thinner. So definitely do it in that order. So I'm going to prime now and then we're going to start casting. It's nice and warm today, possibly a little bit too warm, but we're undercover and it's a little bit humid, so that should work in our favour.
So the next step in the process is to prime the cement board. It's important to do this because the cement board is very absorbent. So if you pour the concrete straight onto it without priming, then the cement board will suck some of the moisture out of the concrete mix and therefore make it a little bit weaker. So the primer acts as a barrier. It also acts to create adhesion between the concrete mix and the board itself. The primer I'm using is our universal primer, which is diluted in 1 part water. Next, we lugged all the materials into place right next to where we were going to be casting. and then we got the mixer set up and ready. Now in this video we're using a bell or cement mixer that can hold 2 bags in one mix. Check out our video above where we test a bog standard cement mixer versus a paddle mixer. With everything in place, we start by adding the water to the mixer. A handy tip is to mark a line on the container that you're using for your water so that you can quickly fill it back up when you're ready to do subsequent mixes. With the water in the mixer, we then add any dye and the white powder, which is a super plasticizer. We then mix that for a maximum of a couple of minutes before we add the concrete powder. You can get 2 bags in the mixer at any time, which takes a lot of work out of the casting process. Now, if you've ever used a cement mixer before, you'll know that when you put the dry powder into the mixer, there's always a cloud of dust. So to counter that, we put plastic sheeting over the face of the mixer with bungee cords to hold it in place. We added the concrete mix to the mixer in batches for 2 reasons. Firstly, not to overload the mixer, and secondly, to allow the dye and the super plasticizer to work their magic. We then let the mixer run for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. And then finally, we added the fibres to the mix and let them mix for no more than a couple of minutes. Then the mix was ready to go. And now it's time to cast the concrete into the mould. If you're looking at this mix and thinking that's not flowing particularly well, then you're correct. We were doing a lot of social media on the day that we cast, and we left the first mix sitting there for about 20 minutes. So this is a 20-minute old mix, and it has stiffened up a little. But then you can see the subsequent mix is a lot more fluid. That should serve as a lesson. Don't let the mix sit there for too long, otherwise it's going to be more difficult to get into your moulds. Every so often whilst casting, we'd go round with a tool that we'd made just to check the level of the concrete. We want the level of the back coat with the fibres to be 5mm lower than the top of the moulds, so that we can finally go on with a fibre-free face coat. Here's the tool that we made. It's simply 2 pieces of timber strapped together. One is 5mm offset from the other. That allows us to get a level between the plastic strips that are 30mm high at the back of the mould and the melamine strips at the front of the mould. As we moved our way around the mould casting the concrete, every so often we'd push the concrete into the front lip just to make sure that it was completely filled. This means that when it comes to demoulding, there's much less of a likelihood of there being any large holes or pinholes. So we finished pouring the back coat, and then it was time to chill. Before you can start pouring the face coat onto the back coat has to be firm enough. So you have to leave a little bit of time to let the back coat lay up.
See if the back coat is ready to receive the fibre-free face coat. As long as it is firm enough to the touch and nothing comes off on your fingers, then it's good to go.
We mixed the face coat up in exactly the same way that we did the back coat, except we didn't add the fibres obviously. And then we let it rest for about 5 minutes and then started pouring it into the mould. Now, as you can see, it flows really easily. And with the help of a trowel, it's really simple to get it nice and level and nice and smooth. We worked our way round from one side to the other, just being methodical in the way that we poured, just making sure that where we did pour one section onto the next, there wasn't a definite division line between the 2 pours. We tried to go wet on wet everywhere that we went, so that we weren't pouring it in random spots.
So it's now 2 o'clock, or 10 to 2. We started casting at about 11 o'clock this morning. So it's taken us 3 hours, and we've done the back coat and we've done the face coat. The face coat is really quick actually. It's really simple. I think more of the work goes into the back coat, but none of it's particularly difficult. It's time consuming and there's a lot of lugging materials around, so the trade-off between cost and labour is what you're benefiting effectively. It's a very simple process. Now this is still very wet, we're probably going to be waiting until, let's say it's 2 o'clock, at least 5 o'clock now before we can trowel up. So that's where it's important to start your project early in the morning or start casting. We started at 11 o'clock, probably a little bit late, but that's okay. It's a warm day at the moment. So if it's a hot day, just bear in mind that the mix is going to go off a lot quicker. On a cool day, you're going to have a bit more time. So in that regard, you've got a little bit more luxury, but it's going to be a longer day. So just bear that in mind. One thing we did notice when we were pouring the back coat to start with is that we left a little bit too long between the first mix and the second mix because we were doing some social media stuff as well. It's really good to keep going. Get 2 bags in your mixer, get them mixing up, pouring one batch in whilst the other one is mixing, and that will make things a lot easier. The longer you leave it, the stiffer the mix. Half an hour in a bucket, the mix will be very, very difficult to get in place. And then you're chasing time throughout the whole project. So, like I say, we've done this now, and we'll leave it a couple of hours before we start troweling it up. As you've probably seen, the mix self-level, so a lot of the work is taken out of it. So we can see it's pretty much level. It's not perfectly level. That's kind of part of casting place. But then with the troweling action, those sort of undulations will hopefully be pretty much leveled out. So we'll see you in a couple of hours. So it's now 5 o'clock, we've left it for 3 hours and it's firm enough now to start troweling up, which is brilliant. It's a testament to how hot it is today. It's 24 degrees, so it's gone off quickly. So we're going to work our way around the top now, take out any small undulations, and hopefully that will be it. There might be a little bit of sanding to do tomorrow, but because of the nature of the mix, because it flows and because it gets so smooth on its own, it takes all the work out. So like I say, we're going to give it a quick trowel now, and hopefully that will be most of the work done.
So when it comes to troweling, we recommend using a pool trowel. A pool trowel is different from a normal trowel and the ends are rounded. You can see me using a square trowel in the background. What happens with a square trowel is that you end up putting lines into the surface, so we don't recommend using those. So you just keep working the pool trowel round and round on the flat, and that will take the shine off the surface of the concrete and bring up a kind of paste. That paste is perfect because you can use it to fill in any of the tiny undulations and bumps that have been left after the face coat has been poured. Every so often, and particularly on a warm day, mist the surface of the concrete with a squirty bottle filled with just plain old normal water. That will help to keep the trowel gliding over the surface of the concrete, and also it will release the paste from the surface. The method that we generally work to is to make small circular motions, or on the edges just small back and forth motions, and then once the surface has been dulled down, then we'll move on to a larger sweeping motion to even out the surface. A word of warning: if you find that you're pulling up too much material, as in it's making loads of paste, then really you're going to want to stop and let the surface harden up a little bit more before carrying on. Again, this harks back to starting the project earlier in the day, basically so you don't end up troweling up by moonlight. Keep working methodically across the entire surface of your concrete, using the squirty bottle to mist the concrete with water as you go. The process doesn't take too long, but it's important not to rush this stage. Working up the paste from the surface and getting your lovely new concrete finished to absolute perfection is a really enjoyable process. And it's at this point in the project where you can see all your hard work really coming together. Once you've finished troweling up, have a good look over the tops just to make sure that there aren't any little imperfections or dints or pits or whatever in the surface, because now is the easiest time to get rid of them and to level them out. By the time the whole process was finished, it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, which is a good solid day's work. But I'm sure you'll agree from just watching it, it's also very satisfying. So the only thing left to do now with the concrete after the day of casting is to tent it off with plastic sheets. The reason for this is you want to cure it overnight, but you don't want there to be too much moisture loss from the concrete. This is for a variety of reasons. You don't want the face to crack, and you want there to be enough moisture available to the chemical reaction that's going to occur in the cement to ensure both quick and long-term strength. A word of warning though, it's quite a tricky job doing this on your own. Really, there needs to be two people. The reason for this is that you don't want the plastic to touch the surface of your newly troweled concrete. So in the next video, we will remove the plastic and we'll start polishing up the concrete and then finally give it a seal. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in part 2.